blog. Today I want to talk about something that can be seeming like really terrifying on the internet, but I also have seen when working with my clients, especially here recently, that trying to get pregnant at 40 is not as scary as it sounds. Okay. And again, the internet can make it feel terrifying. It's like, oh, after 40, definitely not. But we are seeing an influx of people who are trying to get pregnant later on in life. So while age certainly is associated with making it a little harder for you to get pregnant, there are also a lot of women who can get pregnant on their own without needing IVF or IUI. And there's a lot that you can do to improve your chances of getting pregnant without any sort of IVF, IUI. And so I kind of want to dive into that. So my background, I'm Katie. I'm a nurse practitioner. I'm a fertility consultant. I struggled with infertility and miscarriage. And so now I help other people get pregnant faster, get pregnant without IVF, get better outcomes when they do go that IVF route. So as we get older, what is it that makes it harder to get pregnant? Well, it's a lot of things. One, we will see a decline in egg quality. So just naturally, because those are some of your oldest cells in your body, we're going to see that it is more difficult to kind of give them the nutrition that it needs. Okay. The other thing is that we see that with age, we have less remaining eggs. So we are going to lose eggs from the time that we are in utero to the point of menopause, and that's kind of what sets off menopause, is when we have no more remaining eggs. And as we get older, we get closer to menopause. So knowing how old your mother was when she started menopause can be helpful for you to also kind of gauge where you are. Now, if your mom had a hysterectomy, if your mom had medication-induced menopause, there's some other things that can contribute to that, just to kind of be mindful of. The next thing that can be impactful or, pertinent to getting pregnant when you get older is ovulation. So you may start seeing as you get older that the days of your cycle start becoming longer, and you may not be ovulating as frequently or at the same time as you have in the past. So just kind of a change in your cycle occurs with age and as you kind of get closer to menopause. The other thing is kind of our metabolic health. As we get older, we have less muscle mass that starts to change kind of our body composition. It starts to change how we process glucose. There's a lot of things that go into that too. So there are certainly things that can negatively impact fertility. However, there are so many things that you can do on your own to really improve egg quality, to really improve metabolic health, to reduce inflammation in the body, to help strengthen ovulation. So all these things that can really make a huge difference. And I've seen this so much in my clients here recently. I've got several clients right now who are 40, close to 40, early 40s, and a handful of them have already gotten pregnant, which is great news, without IVF. So I'm going to tell you guys a little bit more about what some of the biggest mistakes that I see and kind of how to approach getting pregnant when you are closer to that 40 or 40 or above. Okay. So the first thing we want to do is confirm ovulation. Your cycles are probably starting to change. And if you're on birth control, we need to have you come off of that right now. If getting pregnant kind of in the next year is a priority to you. The other thing we're looking at is the timing of your cycles. How long are your cycles? What is going on with them? What is your flow like? Kind of understanding all of those things can be really important, because we want to understand if you are ovulating, if it's a strong ovulation, are we having enough progesterone support? Are we seeing what we're supposed to see kind of in that luteal phase? Okay. So that's the first thing, is really understanding your ovulation. And you can do that with lab work from your OBGYN, PCP. If you're in Chattanooga, Nutrition World can help with a lot of that stuff. I can help with that stuff if you're a client. So that is the first thing. The next thing is comprehensive labs. So some of the main labs that I get asked about are AMH, which is your anti-Müllerian hormone. And that is a measurement of kind of how many remaining eggs that we think that you have. It is not a great resource. It's helpful, and it is something that I like to look at and see. It's not something that I track really over time. It is not something that I put a ton of weight into. It's just as a reference point for like how quickly we may need to do some additional workup, etc. The next thing is thyroid function, and I want to see a pretty extensive thyroid panel with clients, especially for my clients who are approaching 40, over 40. So not just a thyroid stimulating hormone or a TSH. I want to see a more extensive panel. Okay. The next thing I want to see is, what is your glucose doing? What is your insulin looking like? What are we seeing with hemoglobin A1C? What are we seeing with a fasting insulin or a fasting glucose? A lot of times I'm really pushing for a CGM, that is your continuous glucose monitor, especially in my clients who are approaching 40, because we're just more likely to start seeing some metabolic issues, meaning you're not using your glucose the way that you should, and we'll see more spikes in blood glucose, which is negative for fertility. Okay, we want to see that blood glucose is staying more consistent. We want to keep things leveled off, so we want to kind of track and trend. What are your numbers looking at? What can we change within your diet to really support that? Okay, a vitamin D is always really important, and that's for everybody across the board. I wouldn't say necessarily see more vitamin D deficiency in my close to 40-year-old clients. I think that's across the board, pretty variable, but we want to make sure that those levels are optimal. So usually above 40, 40 to 60, I think is usually where I like clients. And then inflammation markers. So that would be like your CRP, and it stands for C-reactive protein. And that is a lab that helps me understand, do we have some inflammation going on in the body? All my clients do an inflammation assessment so that we can kind of figure out, where are we seeing that you have signs of inflammation in the body? How can we go tackle those? Okay. And again, I don't want normal labs. I want optimal labs. I want us saying, like, we're having really strong ovulation. I want to say that our insulin and our glucose are like very tightly controlled. Okay. So that is the second thing, kind of what we're thinking about when you are in that 40-ish range. Okay. Next is egg and sperm quality. So both sides matter. Now, there is some literature that is now showing that sperm quality does decline with age. That's not what we have always been taught. And totally makes sense too, right? Like, if we are healthier and our testosterone levels are going to be better, if we are seeing that, guys are healthier, we're going to see that healthier sperm is available. So, I think that this often gets overlooked, and starting with the semen analysis at the front end, especially if you are on the older side of things trying to get pregnant, is so important. So we want to make sure that swimmers are doing what they're supposed to, and that we are also making lifestyle changes to really support sperm quality, because poor sperm quality is going to be associated with increased pregnancy complications, chances of miscarriage being up, chances of genetic issues being up. So that's really important too. Okay. So that is number 3. Number 4, we kind of got into this, but how your inflammation and metabolic health are related to some of the big pillars regarding fertility. So that's going to be sleep, blood glucose or blood sugar, stress amounts, the way that you're able to balance stress, and kind of what is going on and how much it's impacting your daily life, and how much it's messing with kind of stress levels or sleep cycles, etc., because they're all interrelated. Alcohol intake and exercise balance. So we want to make sure that we have like a good, most days that we're keeping everything's balanced. Now, there's no way to be perfect. What we want to do is kind of inch you towards that, and that's going to lead to better pregnancy outcomes. That's going to lead to better postpartum outcomes, because once we have this baby, we need to be healthy enough to kind of maintain that and to be able to kind of keep up with this baby, right? So that's the other big thing, is kind of looking at how those are interrelated and finding out like what is impacting what, right? So if we're not getting enough sleep, if we're having too much stress, that's going to impact cycle and ovulation, etc. So when we're at that 40 mark, and really quite frankly around 37, like, we really need to start getting support earlier. This is not something that we want to go into lightly. Like, you want to have a plan, because your time is shorter than somebody who is 32 when you're 38. We've just got less time to like see how things shake out. We need to be more aggressive. We need to check that stuff at the front end. So this is where We want to, again, start that fertility workup at the front end, not for we're fearful, but because we want to gain control in the areas that we can. If we are knowing that we are having a weak cycle or a regular cycle, what are we going to do to strengthen that? What are we going to change within your diet, your lifestyle, with your supplementation, with your medication to really optimize that? And also understanding your options and setting a timeline is something that I think is really important with this age group. If you are like absolutely no IVF, that timeline is going to be different. If you're like, yeah, I'm eager to do IVF, we want to really make sure that you are in the best state, the best health, because we want to really optimize that egg and sperm quality 3 months to 4 months before starting IVF. So that is a goal too. So sometimes when I'm working with people, it's like, okay, let's work on this for 3 to 4 months. If you think that IVF is going to be your trajectory, we're going to get the ball rolling on that. And then when we start getting ready for your cycle, IVF cycle, your eggs and sperm are going to be in a better state than if we weren't kind of planning and all of this and correcting labs, etc. So some things that can be helpful are, again, monitoring your diet and blood glucose, whether that means increasing fiber, increasing protein, decreasing empty calories, whatever that looks like. Sometimes that's just making some quick modifications for your breakfast instead of just toast, having some toast, adding some peanut butter while you're running out the door. Prioritizing movement and strength training. The way that our body processes and builds muscle in our late 30s and 40s is going to be different than in our early 30s. And so we need to make sure that you have a plan to do that rather than just doing the same thing that you've always done. Or if you're not doing anything, how are we going to start increasing that? Really tackling sleep. Again, as we start approaching menopause, we're more likely to start having sleep irregularities, sleep issues. So if that's happening, we need to address that because any sort of sleep cycle problems are going to negatively impact egg quality, and thus chances of getting pregnant and staying pregnant. We want to make sure that we're really getting tight on inflammation reduction. We want to make sure that you are on targeted supplements, not just like a broad supplement, not just a prenatal. We want to make sure that you're getting that right. And we want to stop over Googling. I mean, there's so much stuff out there. Some of it is so good, some of it is so bad. But if you don't know the right questions to ask and you're going down kind of a rabbit hole of like maybe supplements or maybe just like management of PCOS or maybe just like weight management, you're oftentimes missing the bigger picture. You are missing something that is like really critical. And while you can do so good at like in that lane, if we're missing something big over here, like supporting mitochondrial health or supporting ovulation, then your time can be wasted. And at this point of trying to conceive, we don't want to waste time. That's the biggest thing, is we do not want to waste time. So kind of really focusing on small, consistent changes that put you in a better spot and not necessarily leading to perfection, because that's impossible. It's impossible to cut out all the toxins. It is impossible to be perfect. We're not perfect. And so just making those changes to really kind of tee you up for success. And then a lot of my clients are, have different feelings about IVF or IUI. And I think that IVF is an incredible tool. But if that's not your like goal, or you're absolutely not, then our conversations and what we're going to be doing are a little bit different. Preparation for all of this matters so much, because it can really save you time. It can save you heartbreak. It can save you stress, all of these things. Because the longer that you go without a positive pregnancy test, the more stressful it is. Okay. So the other thing that I'm wanting to do with clients too in this age group is like really understanding your options so that you are not frozen. So many of my clients, when we start working together, it is a lot about making sure that egg and sperm quality is top notch, but it is also about accountability. Because if we're like, I really just don't want to do IVF, I really don't want to do IVF, the last thing you want to do is wake up when you're like 45 and be like, God, I wish I had done IVF 3 years ago. So I want to have like real honest conversations about understanding what your options are and a timeline to execute those. And then if you get pregnant in the meantime, score, home run, great. But we want to be mindful of that, okay? And also thinking about how many kids do you want to have. Sometimes I'll have clients who go through IVF, they get their embryos and then they start trying on their own, and then they've got these embryos available to use later, but if they can get pregnant on their own without assistance, now we've got these babies on ice that you can access later if you decide you want to. But if you're able to get pregnant naturally, you don't have to use that. Wonderful. Okay. So a lot of times when I'm working with clients who are in this kind of 40-year-old decade, it is really emotional because you feel this immense pressure. You feel this immense lack of options, right? You just feel like you're being smushed and that you've only got one option. It's like, what have I done? Why have I put this off so long? And I get that. And I also understand that it can be so helpful to say, let me make a plan. Like, let's make a plan together if you're in that group so that you don't feel like you don't know what to do. So you don't feel like you're making just like quick decisions based on something that you saw on Google or ChatGPT, because there's so many things that we can do to actually support your egg quality, sperm quality, etc. But you don't want to go at this alone because there's just so much that you want to kind of be mindful of. And that is exactly where I can come in and help people work through that every single day, to again, get the best outcomes, get to a healthy baby faster. So kind of the main takeaways are age matters, but it's not the only thing that matters. Okay. People are getting pregnant later. We have got better drugs. We've got better medications that can help support egg quality or ovulation strength, or those people that have kind of diminished ovarian reserve. We have more options now. So let's explore what those are. We want to be very strategic in this timeline as well, not in a panic mode and making decisions rashly or doing a treatment before you're ready. Okay. So if don't get pushed into that, get prepared for that. Okay. The goal is not perfection. The goal is to optimize egg and sperm quality so that we get the best outcomes. Here's what your options are. Here's the questions that you need to ask. Here are the things that make me a little bit concerned for you. Here are the things that make me really confident for you. And that's going to be different between person to person every single time. And don't waste time guessing. You will not regret making decisions about your future in a thoughtful way. You want to, of course, get the best outcomes, and you want to be thoughtful to get there. It's just like nobody is going to make the best decisions when they are feeling like they're sitting on a hot plate. Okay, if you feel like you're just like, oh my God, I'm burning up, I've got to make a decision, I got to get off this hot plate, I got to get pregnant, you're not going to be making good decisions. And you might be pushed to do things that you aren't aware of, or that you haven't kind of researched well. So one thing that I see is that people will spend a lot of money, not a lot, but sometimes people will spend a lot more money and time than I would maybe recommend doing things like IUI when we know that they are not a good candidate, whether they've got like fallopian tube issues or really poor sperm quality issues. Like, we want to understand why that's a good option or why it's not a good option for you before you go spend your time and money and waste additional months with certain treatments. And again, that may be a perfect option for you. However, it's really helpful and important to kind of zoom out for a little bit and understand why you're doing that and what you can do to prepare for it and kind of what your chances are each month of getting pregnant. So, yeah, I think that's kind of the main thing I wanted to take away from this. If you're interested in learning more about working one-to-one, feel free to check out the application on my website. And if you have any kind of topics that you want to learn about, drop them in the comments and we will be sure to try to make another post that is pertinent to you. Okay, hope this is helpful. See you next time.